Good morning. Welcome back to another exciting day on Planet Doug. And this morning I have sort of two projects on the go. The main one is that I'm heading towards the P. Ramlee Memorial House here in Kuala Lumpur. And if you're from Malaysia or Singapore or probably Thailand, you know P. Ramlee. I don't have to tell you who he is. But in case you're from another country around the world, I'll say, well, Hollywood has their Cary Grant, their Humphrey Bogart, all of their movie stars. Here in Malaysia and in Singapore, they have P. Ramlee. In his lifetime, he wrote and recorded over 500 songs, and he starred in 62 feature films. So he's a very big deal here. And yeah, they have a memorial house to him where he lived when he was in Kuala Lumpur, and I'm going to go visit the house today. I have some notes here about P. Ramlee, and I thought maybe the simplest way to introduce him would be just to read something from the Wikipedia entry about him. So here we go. Tan Sri Datuk Amar Tuku Zakaria bin Tuku Nayak Putte, later Ramlee bin Putte, better known by his stage name P. Ramlee, was a Malaysian actor, filmmaker, musician, and composer, famous in modern-day Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and southern Thailand. Born in Penang, Malaya, he is regarded as a prominent icon of Malay language entertainment. So that big, long, confusing part at the beginning, that was his official name. But as I learned, as I was reading about it, a big part of it consists of honorifics. So later in his life, when he was being honored for his achievements, he was given the honorific titles Tan Sri. So that's one title he was given. And on a separate occasion, he was given the honorific Datuk Amar. So when you see his name, Tan Sri Datuk Amar, all of that is just a title. And his actual name was Tuku Zakaria. So his name was Tuku Zakaria. But you also see his name listed as Tuku Zakaria bin Tuku Nayak Putte. And that's because in the way names work here, they often include son of. So bin, I believe, means son of. So he is Tuku Zakaria, son of Tuku Nayak Putte. So yeah, it gets very, very complicated. An interesting thing about this man, whose name is Tuku Zakaria, his father was born in Aceh province, and so his father immigrated basically from Aceh to Penang here at that time it was called British Malaya. So his father immigrated to Penang, British Malaya, and he married a local woman from Butterworth, and then they had a son, and that son, they gave him the name Tuku Zakaria. But then when his father enrolled him in the schools in Penang, he thought the name Tuku Zakaria would be sort of a barrier for him. I guess it was an unusual name. So his father gave him a new name. So when he registered him for school, his father registered him as Ramlee, gave him a new name, Ramlee, because he thought that name would allow him to fit in better with the boys from Penang. And because his father's name was Putte, he became Ramlee Putte. And there was a common tradition to take your father's name and put it at the front of your name, just the letter. So he became known as P. Ramlee. Putte became P, and then his father gave him almost the nickname of Ramlee when he registered for school, and for the rest of his life and for his entertainment career, he was known as P. Ramlee, which is I find that really interesting. There goes my bus, Rapid KL, bus 202. So I have a very short walk to get from here to the memorial, and I'll see what else I can remember about what I've learned about P. Ramlee. Very interesting life, but I got to the point where he was born in Penang to a father from Aceh and a mother from Butterworth in British Malaya. Again, I could call it Malaysia, it is Malaysia, but at that time Malaysia didn't exist yet. He was born in 1929, so that gives you an idea of the era that we're talking about. He lived through the Japanese occupation of Penang, lived through World War II. Very interesting era back then. So he was born in 1929, went to school in Penang, known as Ramlee, P. Ramlee at his school. And then, well, he was a born singer. He was just a born musician. According to what I read, he was not a good student. He was not particularly well-behaved or academic, but he was talented, could play a lot of different instruments. He loved to write his own songs. He was performing in local bands, and he was entering singing competitions. And I believe he kept winning these singing competitions. And then he won, or he competed in a singing competition in 1948, and that's when he was discovered. There happened to be a man in the audience who worked for the Malaya film production company based in Singapore. And he saw Ramlee competing in the singing competition, and he basically discovered him and cast him in a role in a movie in Singapore. And I assume P. Ramlee moved to Singapore to perform in this film. It was a small part, and movies in those days had a lot of singing, so it suited him perfectly. And interestingly, there was this distinction at the time between the actor and the singer. So there would be the star of the movie, a handsome man or a beautiful woman is always the star of a movie, and they would be very good actors, but they may or may not be good singers. So they would actually have a stunt singer. So they would have the movie star, but then when it came time for him to sing in the movie, they would hire a professional singer, and then that singing would be overlaid over top, kind of dubbed in, I guess. Along comes P. Ramlee. He was a great actor. Like he was a dual threat, a double threat. He was a great actor and a great singer. And according to what I read, he was one of the very first, maybe the first movie star to sing his own songs in his movies. And as I said already, in his lifetime, he starred in 62 movies, wrote over 500 songs. He directed, he wrote, he basically did it all. Crossing the road here, I have to head in this direction. Yeah, so he got his very first small part in a movie in 1948, and then I believe he acted in a lot of movies not as an extra, but in small parts, doing a lot of singing, I assume. And then in 1950, he got his first starring role. He acted in a movie in which he was the star, the movie star, the singer, the whole package. And then came the golden era. I think that the golden era of his performing life was actually in Singapore. He was born, as I said, in Penang. Malaysia can claim him as one of their sons. He is the movie star of Malaysia. As I said, Hollywood has their Cary Grants. Malaysia has P. Ramlee. But most of the work that he did and most of his fame came from the time that he was living and working in Singapore for the Malaya Film Production Company. And that period of time, what they call the golden era for P. Ramlee, I believe it was from 1955 to 1964. And then in 1964, he left Singapore and moved back to Malaysia, and he lived here in Kuala Lumpur, and he was making films with another company, Merdeka Film Productions, something like that. So he continued to make movies, continued to write songs, continued to perform all the time, but he wasn't as famous here at that time as he was when he was living in Singapore. And I mentioned that there were some hints in his life story that I found quite interesting, and I want to know whether the memorial house talks about this. According to what I read, there was a lot of jealousy here from the actors and singers who were still like based in Malaysia proper, not in Singapore. And then P. Ramlee had trouble finding his footing here. People were sort of against him. He didn't have the same sort of natural success that he had in Singapore. So his golden era kind of ended in 1964 when he moved back to Malaysia and started starring in movies here in Kuala Lumpur. So that was quite interesting. There was even a story where he won a lot of awards. He went to a lot of awards programs, the East Asian version of the Academy Awards, basically. And then he would win, he would be nominated, he would go to these big events, but then the Malaysian actors and singers didn't want him sitting with them, again, according to what I read. And he would actually end up sitting with all of the actors and singers from Singapore, not from Malaysia. So, but then, decades later, after he passed away, he died at the age of 44. So he was a very young man when he passed away, which always strikes me as quite interesting. You read about all these famous people from history, even from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and they didn't seem to live very long. It always seems odd. I read about a man like P. Ramlee, everything he did, all of his accomplishments, like I said, 500 plus songs at the top of the charts, in demand for performing. He's a star, over 60 movies, writing, directing, acting. He did all of that, and when he passed away, he was only 44 years old. How do you do all of that? It's all I can do to get out of bed, have a cup of coffee, and take bus 202 over here, and I'm done for the day. I'm exhausted. I'm not, my day hasn't even begun. It's not like I'm going to star in a movie and write a script and perform a song, and he did all of that in such a young life. It's pretty amazing. I'm in a residential neighborhood, as you can see. If you look around behind me, you can see all of these houses here. And the reason I'm in a residential neighborhood is because the memorial to P. Ramlee is his old house, where he lived when he was in Kuala Lumpur. I don't know if this was his one and only house here or the house he was living in when he passed away. I don't know about that, but this is definitely where he lived at some point, and it has been converted into a memorial to him and his life. Another fascinating thing about P. Ramlee is that he had 3 wives. His first wife, he was married to her from 1950 to 55. They got divorced, and he remarried, and he was married to another woman from 55 to 61, and they got divorced. And then he had the most famous marriage of his life, and people associate this with him because he married Saloma. And Saloma is a very well-known person in the world of singing here in Malaysia as well. She's very famous in Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore. There's a bridge here. I walked across this bridge when I went to the Ramadan Bazaar in Kampong Baru, and that bridge is called the Saloma Link, and it is named after Saloma, P. Ramlee's 3rd wife. And right beside the bridge, I visited this place a long time ago. I made a video about the bridge, all about Saloma. You can check out that video if you like. But there is a cemetery right at the base of the Saloma Link, the Saloma Bridge. It's a Muslim cemetery, and Saloma is buried there And beside her on one side is P. Ramlee. He's also buried there. And I believe on the other side was her first husband. And P. Ramlee passed away in 1973. And according to what I read, her grief at his passing was so strong. It took a toll on her health. And then she succumbed to a series of illnesses. And eventually she passed away in April of 1983 at the age of 48. So another very famous person, Saloma, and she also lived a very short life. And you do wonder sometimes whether these stars burn so brightly, and perhaps by burning so brightly, they die at a young age. Seems to happen a lot. But of course, it was just at that time. People didn't live as long as they do now. Oh, okay. There's a sign. Pustaka Peringatan P. Ramlee. It's pointing in a different direction than I expected. I thought it was over here, but I guess I have things backwards. So I love a good sign, so we'll trust the sign and head in this direction. I think I'm about a block away from the memorial house, but a couple of last thoughts before I get there. I mentioned that he was not as revered in Malaysia when he came back. I think he completed 18 movies with Merdeka Film Productions, but he never attained the fame. His films were never as acclaimed as they were when he was in Singapore. And then he passed away in 1973. But it wasn't until the 80s that Malaysia started to claim him as one of their own. And then people started to recognize him more and more. And he was being given tons of honors posthumously. He was given those titles that I mentioned already, the honorifics before his name. And then now he's been completely embraced by the people of Malaysia as one of their movie stars, one of their great singers. So this should be quite interesting. I think that's it. There's a gate that's open. I see a sign here, a plaque. We're on Jalan Dedap. And as you can see, just a very simple residential neighborhood. Very similar houses all around. And this is where P. Ramlee would have lived back in those days. You have to be aware of that quite often. If you go anywhere on a Friday, many places will close at noon and then they'll open up again at 3, and that's to allow everyone to attend the important Friday prayers, of course. And it's closed one day of the week, Mondays. So there they are, visiting hours, Tuesday to Sunday, 9 till 5. And then on Friday, 9 to 12, and then 3 till 5. Starting right from the beginning, this is the sign you want to look for to get to the memorial. And as I noted, there's an interesting plaque outside, 4 languages on that plaque. Note the website down at the bottom there, archive.gov.my. I believe that stands for archive. A lot of interesting information there if you want to track it down. The memorial is housed inside the house where P. Ramlee lived, so it looks like a typical residential home, and you go through this gate and it's like you're walking into someone's private home. And as you enter the grounds, you'll see these benches on the outside, and there's a list of all of his movies on the benches. And on this bench you can see the 1948 film Cinta. That's the one I mentioned that was his first movie role that he got in Singapore when he got his big break. Also in front of the house is P. Ramlee's car. This is a Datsun 1971 Sunny. On the sign here, it calls it a Datsun Bad 3608, but that's not the
brand of the car, that's actually just the license plate. In reality, it's a Datsun Sunny. The memorial has a very interesting design. It's set up to look like a movie theater. And as you go inside, you'll see that the desk in the lobby looks a little bit like a movie ticket counter, and up above it is another sign that looks like it's announcing movies that are playing now or upcoming attractions. Right behind the desk in the front lobby, there's a small souvenir center. You can buy t-shirts and other souvenirs for the memorial. And right inside the lobby area, you can see a floor plan for P. Ramlee's home. And here you see the home being renovated and rebuilt and turned into the memorial that it is today. You also see a replica of P. Ramlee's childhood home in Penang. And in fact, this house has also been turned into a memorial to P. Ramlee and his life. Another example of how the memorial is designed to look like a movie theater. These are the visiting hours, but it looks like a movie poster. I thought that was quite clever. And as you move through the memorial, you see a lot of portraits, drawings of P. Ramlee and his wife Saloma. And they look so glamorous in all of these portraits and drawings. It really gives you a sense of what Malaysia was like back in the 50s and 60s. This wide shot shows you that the memorial is a relatively small space, but it is packed with tons of interesting information. Going around in a clockwise direction, one of the first exhibits you see is this one, which basically answers the question, who is P. Ramlee? And below this large display, you see a red board that gives a lot of information, more detailed information about his life. And these are things that I didn't see when I was doing my research before visiting this place. So this, for example, is P. Ramlee's mother. And I hadn't seen this photograph before. And there's another photograph here of P. Ramlee's father from Aceh when he was a young man. The memorial also has a little bit of a feel of a scrapbook with photographs and documents put together as if they are in a family photo album or scrapbook. So you see pictures like these, P. Ramlee with his football team, another photo of him with some of his classmates, and then a series of photos of the various bands that he played in, different instruments for each band. And he also played in orchestras, you see here on the right. Speaking of glamour, here's P. Ramlee with a pompadour hairstyle, very fashionable back in those days. Reminds me of Elvis in this photograph. I believe the piano and the phonograph, everything you see here, are the actual items that P. Ramlee had in his house, and this is the piano he would have played on in his own home. And when you step back from this exhibit, you'll see that this room as well is stylized to look like it's a little movie theater. And this, of course, is P. Ramlee's living room with his television set. And then when you step back from the room again, you see that it's like a little movie theater. And the memorial, in fact, does have its own little movie theater. Step inside this room and you see that it's a comfortable little mini cinema showing P. Ramlee movies, and they have English subtitles here. And on the walls you can see the coming soon, the coming attractions, and those are actual movie posters from P. Ramlee's movies. I took photographs of a few of them, and I recognized the names of all these movies from the reading I did. Around the corner from the cinema, you see a timeline of all of P. Ramlee's movies. starting in 1948 and going all the way up to 1972. This was probably my favorite exhibit in the whole place, a little diorama of a P. Ramlee movie set. There's a lot of little details in there that are a lot of fun to check out. I believe this display is dedicated to a lot of his musical accomplishments. And then there is an entire wall of all the awards that P. Ramlee and his movies won over the years. So you get a lot of awards for Best Actor. And I got the impression that his movies won a lot of titles for Best Comedy 1959, Best Comedy 1969. He made a lot of really funny movies. There's a wide shot of his musical accomplishments and the awards that his movies won over the years. I took this picture mainly because of the bench. I love any museum that supplies benches, gives visitors a place to sit down and rest from time to time. The final display here is a wall all about the end of P. Ramlee's life when he passed away, and this is quite interesting, and I talk about it quite a bit more later on at the end of the video. And right next to it is a very interesting display about Saloma, her life, and some of the fashion from her life. And as you go around the house, it ends here at the dining room. The floor plan that I showed earlier is here at this dining room exhibit. Something very important to notice is that there's a red board going all the way around on the bottom underneath these room exhibits. And there's a lot of really interesting information contained in these red boards. I'm not going to go over all of it, but I'll show you a few of the things that are there. Here, for example, is the story of P. Ramlee being discovered, moving to Singapore, traveling by train from Penang to Singapore, and getting his first role in a movie. And we learn a little bit about P. Ramlee's families, his first wife, and the children that he had. We also learn about the very first film that P. Ramlee directed. And this is a list of P. Ramlee's children. And that brings me to the end of my little slideshow tour. And I wanted to end it with this image because if you scan that QR code, it will bring you to a website with information about all these historical buildings around Malaysia, including the P. Ramlee Memorial. And you can also get a virtual 3D tour of these places, including a 3D tour of this P. Ramlee Memorial. It's a lot of fun. Check it out. The P. Ramlee Memorial House, Pustaka Peringatan P. Ramlee. So yeah, there it is there as I walk away. And I have to say, Planet Doug approved. Absolutely Planet Doug approved. Really enjoyed that. I think they did an excellent job. Better than excellent, really. The museum is small, of course. It is about the life of one man and his career. So we're not talking about 20 rooms spread over several buildings, anything like that. It was his home where he lived. And I sat there for the longest time watching one of his old movies. I think it was from 1968, black and white film called Anak Bapak. It was a comedy, and it was such a surprise. It was actually delightfully funny. I never expected to see that kind of a movie, particularly here in Malaysia. But that was a very different time than now. I get the feeling that was a very special time in Malaysia's history. The music that they played in the story of the movie, the fashion, especially of the women, they were dressed very much in a European style, very young, very hip, dancing to the music, and it was actually something that I would think of as it's a comedy, a bit of like a bedroom farce, where all these people just happen to end up in the same house together, men and women. And everybody is sneaking around the house,
because there's all these secret romances going on in the background, and people are trying to sneak from one bedroom to the next bedroom, and they're constantly being discovered. And it was just so funny. I couldn't believe it. I was laughing out loud while I was watching this 1968 black and white P. Ramlee movie in this tiny private theater that I had all to myself. It was very, very funny. I was quite surprised. I enjoyed that a lot. And then as you continue through the memorial, through the museum, beyond the movie theater, there's another room, a whole wall dedicated to all the awards that he and his movies won. And then there's a complete wall dedicated to the end of his life. He died of a heart attack, apparently, and the memorials to his passing, and then all the honors that he won later in life. And that was also so well done. Again, like I said, it was exactly like a scrapbook. If someone was putting together a scrapbook of a family member or a hero of theirs, a literary entertainment figure, and they make a scrapbook dedicated to them. Newspaper clippings, for example. There were 2 full front page samples containing the articles written when he passed away. So one from the Straits Times, I believe from Singapore, and then from the Star here in Malaysia. And it has a big article with a headline saying that P. Ramlee has passed away. But it's like an amazing time capsule, because right beside the article, you can see all the other articles, everything that was going on at that time. So I sat there for a couple of minutes reading all the articles, and apparently on the same day that he passed away, there was a daring burglary of some kind where criminals got away with $15,000 worth of gems, diamonds, and things like that. And that was headline news. That was front page news in the Straits Times and in the Star. So the 2 big stories of the day: on one side, P. Ramlee, the hero, the icon of the movie industry, has passed away, and then this story about criminals stealing $15,000 worth of diamonds and gold. It just seems like such a different world long ago, and very glamorous and very interesting, just to read all of the articles there happening when P. Ramlee was alive and when he passed away. Yeah, absolutely Planet Doug approved. A couple of details, I guess. It's free entry. There's no charge. They have a gift shop, air conditioned, as I said. They do have public washrooms available. And it's not close to an LRT or MRT station, unfortunately. But if you take the time to figure out how the buses work, you can get here. Perhaps I should have ended the video back at the museum, a more scenic spot than right here out in out in busy commercial Kuala Lumpur, but this is where I happen to be. And I think I'll end the video right here. Planet Doug approved, as I said, highly recommended. If you're in Kuala Lumpur, it's a very interesting window into the life of P. Ramlee, but more than that, by learning about his life and watching the movies and reading all the articles, looking at all the family photographs, school photographs, you really come to understand a lot more about Malaysia, particularly from that long ago time period. Fascinating stuff. Yeah, really fascinating. So that's it. Shutting down the camera for now. Going to try and find a bus. That's going to be another big adventure. And after that, well, we'll see what happens next. Whatever I end up doing next, I will see you in that video.